11 meeting of the Evanston City Council. The first agenda item is Mayor's public announcements. I do not have any. City Manager, do you have announcements?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. I do. First, I'd like to ask our Chief of Police for Jeddington to come to the podium and speak to an issue. Chief Eddington, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. City Manager, members of the council, Madam Mayor, and City Clerk Green. I've been asked to make a couple of comments tonight on something you'll hear about in citizen comment, and that's the outpost at Dominic's. I think this is a difficult issue that has caused consternation in the community, and I wanted to convey to the members of the council that the decision was not undertaken lightly. If you reflect back to the March 7th Human Services Committee meeting, you will see a presentation by Commander Hartley and her staff regarding some of those issues and the fallout from those issues regarding theft of liquor by underage persons. After that presentation, the Dominic's Corporation approached us and asked us about putting a outpost in their store. We checked with the 24th District and reviewed their experience with a similar facility, not exactly the same, but a similar facility at their store at Howard and Chicago. Having gone through that review, I felt it was appropriate to pursue this opportunity for two reasons. The first and foremost for me is to deter underage liquor thefts. I think if you look at the follow-on antisocial behavior when there's a successful theft, that's problematic for the community. The second follow-on issue for an unsuccessful liquor theft is a criminal record. And I think that as we look in today's economy and the deleterious effects that has on a person's ability to gain useful employment, that's problematic. And I feel that the officer's periodic presence at the location will cause young people to think, even for an instant, that this may not be the right time to engage in this act. The second thing I'd like to accomplish by a periodic presence at the store is non-crisis contacts with members of the public. I think that I know how frequently I'm in grocery stores. I know members of the public will be by. That'll give us an opportunity to interact with them in a non-crisis setting and develop that friendliness, familiarity with the people we serve and protect, and at the same time have an opportunity to chat with them on various matters. So while I realize that there's some concern about this decision, I believe, and I have listened to the members of the community express those concerns, and on multiple occasions, and I have said to them, and I will say again, I sincerely feel their passion, but I'm missing the point of the resistance, and I feel that passion very strongly, but at the end of the day, as a police deployment decision, I think there will be many goods come from this. And once again, if it's not, I'm the responsible party making the decision. And if it works, I'll be more than happy to give the credit to the men and women of the Evanston Police Department who are out there interacting with the public. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. If there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just have one, Chief Eddington. Could you perhaps describe how this will all work? I believe we currently have one other location in the community which we describe as an outpost on Howard Street. Could you perhaps compare and contrast what the Dominic's location would be compared to how the Howard Street location is used?
The Howard Street location is our building. It's larger, and it's often used by Alderman Rainey primarily for a myriad of purposes, a myriad of community meetings. We often have our neighbors from the 24th District over for community meetings. There's economic development meetings, and based on that facility and our ownership, we have a lot more latitude of what goes on there. The Dominic's location will be smaller, and it's basically going to be a desk and a phone where the officers who are on duty will stop by periodically to complete reports, make some phone calls back to the station, have a soda pop or a cup of coffee, and be generally available to the public. It will not be staffed 24/7, and it will be the officer on duty in that beat and what we call the cover cars, the cars that have citywide responsibility, and other specialized units like traffic will be in and out of there. But I don't want to leave the impression with the public that there is going to be an officer there no matter what. If there's an emergency, please, as always, call 911.
Chief, I have one question. We changed at the Liquor Commission, we changed our procedures, and now we are going to be asking the police department at any grocery store proposes selling liquor to look at the floor plan and advise us as to whether it's the best possible floor plan to prevent theft. Is there anything that Dominick's could be doing, either changing the floor plan or with the building itself, that they're not doing that would prevent theft?
Well, let me just say the first success on your new policy of a police review of grocery store floor plans is last week I met with representatives from Aldi, and they've agreed to put their liquor display in an interior aisle. We believe that that will prevent the hit-and-run shoplifters, and so they've applied for a liquor license, Alderman, and that's what caused my review. So that they have been willing to make those changes. As to Dominick's, we have discussed other options with them, and their security department has engaged in a rather sophisticated video system where their store will be monitored from another location, and when they believe there's an issue, their manager will receive a call to go and check that suspicious activity. And so they are willing to pony up with their dollars and resources in that security facet and continue to be open to suggestions by the police department. And once again, that's a complicated bureaucracy to deal with. They would give us a run for their money.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for your time.
I don't see any
sorry,
lights. Peter.
Yeah, one quick question while I have you up there. I think, and this is part of my learning curve with having the whole dialogue with the community, that there's a misconception that this outpost is just going to serve as a supplement to Dominick's security staff as policing for the mall. Can you just share your thoughts on how that outpost will affect the greater community up and down the Dodge corridor as well as south of Dominick's?
I think, in my opinion, it would have a positive presence, or I wouldn't be undertaking this course of action. I think if you look at the history of what we do and where we do it along the Dodge corridor, I would invite anybody out during an ETHS dismissal. You will see a lot of officers, many of them out of the car, actively engaged with the comings and goings. And so I think that additional, consistent, positive presence will be helpful, and also we'll have, I want to get back to that interaction with the shoppers as they come and go. We're gonna be able to smile and shake hands with a sizable number of people that we wouldn't see otherwise, and I think that in and of itself will have a positive impact. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Eddington. Next, I'd like our Parks, Recreation, Community Services Director, Doug Gaynor, to kind of fill us in on our continuing efforts to clear the community of downed trees and shrubs and branches. Since we were all last here, we have had additional storms and additional damage. So, Doug, if you could just give us an update on where we stand.
Thank you, Wally. Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, and City Manager. We have had probably in the last 45 days well over 400 calls due to the 3 or 4 storms that we've had. And our forestry crews have worked both overtime in the evenings and on weekends. We've been able to also secure assistance from the water department personnel as well as public works folks to help us. You can imagine just by driving in any of the neighborhoods the tree damage. One of the things I wanted to make sort of a point of is that in a lot of cases we've gotten calls saying, your crew just passed my house, they didn't stop, they didn't pick anything up, and we've gotten a lot of comments about that. One of the first things that we have to do is identify hanging dangerous limbs. And so any limbs that are out there that haven't come down, we have to bring down first, because if they haven't come down, they create a huge liability to both persons and personal property. So Where we are now is the forestry crews have begun a street-by-street cleanup of branches and limbs that are on parkways and on the same days that residents have their garbage and recycled picked up. So we'll be out on those days, and we're just going to be going up and down the streets with our chippers doing that work. Fridays are going to be used to try to finish routes that could not have been completed Monday through Thursday, and in some areas more trees or more damage that we have, our staff's going to have to do additional work. Those trees that have had branches come down, we've had to possibly do some trimming. We may have to go back and do additional trimming. I think by the end of this week, we should be about 90 to 95% complete with our cleanup. I'm qualifying that if we don't have another storm. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to introduce a new staff member, Godwin Chin. Godwin, can you stand up and be recognized? Godwin is, let's give him some applause. Godwin is our new ICMA Local Government Management Fellow. As you know, this is the second year we have participated in this program, and Godwin will be with us for 1 year, working out of the city manager's office, doing a variety of tasks. One of his primary tasks will be continued support to the mayor and city council for projects and aldermanic meetings and newsletters. As you all know, Sabina Mora, who was with us for a year, started off many of those responsibilities. She has gone on to greener pastures, and so we're very pleased to have Godwin here with us. Godwin is a native of New York City. He received this spring his Master of Public Administration from the City University of New York, and has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a finance concentration from the New York Institute of Technology in Old Westbury, New York. He has done a variety of different things with his time throughout his college and graduate studies, most notably a stint with the New York City Transit Authority, where he worked on training and surveys for the Transit Authority. He's also active in Taiwanese American activities, working with young people on leadership programs, and has done that throughout the Eastern Seaboard. So we're very happy to have Godwin with us, and I know you will all get to know him as the year progresses. And Madam Mayor, that concludes my reports.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do you have Alderman Burris?
When do we get his email?
After tonight. He gets through tonight, and then he's actually been with us for a week. We've been trying to, we've been giving him vitamins and sending him to the gym, making sure he was all rested and ready to go. But as of tonight, he's all yours.
City Clerk, do you have communications for us?
Yes, I have two, Madam Mayor. The first is reading the availability of bond order for $19,240,000 general obligation corporate purpose bond series 2011A. I, the undersigned, do hereby certify that I am the duly qualified and acting city clerk of the city of Evanston, Cook County, Illinois, the city, and as such official, I am the keeper of the official books, records, minutes, and files of the city and of the city council thereof, the corporate authorities. I do further hereby, certify that I shall make available to all members of the corporate authorities at the regular meeting of the corporate authorities to be held on June 25th, on the 25th day of July 2011, a bond order for the amount of $19,240,000, general obligation corporate purpose bonds, series 2011A, a true, correct, and complete copy of which this is attached hereto. In witness thereof, I hereunto affix my official signature this 20th day of July 2011. So anyone on the corporate board would like to have a copy of this, I have it ready for you.
Thank you.
Also, before we get to the consent agenda for the minutes, I have some corrections I want to do now. The spelling of Al Tesla's name was corrected. The comments for Kevin O'Connor was put in the correct spot, which was on the miscellaneous items, and the right position of the talk for the special SP1 was put in the right position directly under the item itself and not above it. Those are my corrections for the minutes for July 11. And that concludes my communications.
Thank you. I am happy to announce that citizen comment comes next, and everyone gets 3 minutes this time. I'm going to call the first 4 names. If you'd please come up and be ready to speak. Give your name and address. First is Priscilla Giles, Junad Risky, Padma Rao, and B.K. Rao. Yeah, she's here.
My name is Priscilla Giles, and I'm speaking on behalf of the people who use Fleetwood Jourdain. I was there with 2 other seniors when the architects came in with the plans for the beautification of Fleetwood Jourdain. The community was not part of those plans, and we asked, the people who were there asked if the turnaround, and that was the only question we asked, if the turnaround that was there would be replaced. And that was important because there are many people who use wheelchairs, walkers, canes, and we were told yes, that it would be. The turnaround was not put in. Just recently, a walkway was put in. We asked again for that. And that's very important because it may not seem like a long walk to people who are able to walk, but that is a long walk. Right now, there are a few people who help people go from the parking lot, where there is, again, no turnaround, to the larger room that is used. And it is really a problem. It's a hardship for these people. To get into the larger room, it's a hardship for the younger people to take these people one by one in wheelchair, assist them in walkers and canes. And we're asking that the turnaround be put there. We were told that it was not put there because people illegally parked. I think no parking signs and enforcement of no parking signs would correct this situation and help the people who use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to make one comment first on the issue of the police chief. I was at Barnes & Noble on Sunday, and I noticed it appeared to be an off-duty police officer there, and I thought it was discussed before at this council that off-duty officers weren't act as security guards in businesses. It appeared to me that he was acting as that, plus I've seen this on websites. So I'd like to know what's going on with that. I thought we discussed this before, and the issues of the liability and what's going on were never really discussed. So that follows up with something I think that the chief was discussing, but a little different. So I'd like to know about it. I want to get into the budget, though, and that is, why is the city manager creating a mid-year budget change? Why can't staff put the correct amount in the budget in the first place? I have been suggesting the city really can't manage its capital, and I think that's becoming more and more apparent. I'm really quite confused that we're basically going to be cutting operating here next year by $2 million, but right now we're adding to capital through borrowing. The selling of assets also is pretty interesting to me because, frankly, I think many of the estimates staff seems to be preparing for what I would call the repair cost of these assets don't seem correct, and they seem inflated or wrong, period. The Arts Center, I think, is an interesting issue in itself. Showing the Arts Center to prospective buyers and basically when you don't even know what the value of the asset is or even the cost to repair it is rather interesting. How long has the city had ground floor space at the Maple Apple Garage that it hasn't rented? I mean, that's an asset the city isn't even using. It basically was built and nobody's renting it. It's sitting there vacant, basically. It's been vacant for how many years? And the city can't seem to get its act together, and the TIF closed out. It's ridiculous, really. I actually talked to a business owner who was interested in using the space. And I recently thought it was interesting that the Boy Scouts had to roof a picnic shelter here, when at a recent meeting we're talking about building a bicycle shelter. So we don't have money for staff to roof a shelter, and kids are roofing the picnic shelter at Lighthouse Park. Actually, it's dangerous, by the way. The children should have been up on the roof, but that's another issue. Seems to me the other thing that I thought was really interesting is recently years we've been talking about the ADA issues at the branch library, and a group of citizens, the Friends, move it across the street and the ADA issues disappear. I really would suggest the council go through this mid-year budget very, very carefully with a fine-tooth comb and ask a lot of questions. I did think it was interesting there was a $350,000 contingency fund for administrative services. I think there are too many funds here that don't have good explanations and seem to be, they're like little slush funds, so to speak, that aren't being properly accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Padma Rao, 2246 Sherman Avenue. Regarding the Kendall re-subdivision, this council didn't address a single taxpayer concern when it approved a dangerous alley plan and sentenced over 24 mature trees to death. There was no discussion, no ecological impact study, no traffic safety analysis, and no justification in law, science, or logic for this council's vote. Instead, this council said that the city had closed-door meetings with the developer, thereby excluding the public from a public matter. Worse, the Evanston Patch reported that an alderman was overheard assuring the developer's lawyer that the vote would be pushed through regardless of residents' concerns, and that's precisely what this council did. This council's adamant refusal to state any basis for its vote creates the presumption that there is no justification in law or fact for that vote. The developer's lawyer threatened to sue the city using Holland and Knight, but that law firm is legally and ethically precluded from representing against the city because the city was its current and former client. According to the minutes for the council meeting on May 10, 2010, an immediate family member of an alderman works for Holland and Knight. The U.S. Supreme Court held in Nevada Commission on Ethics versus Kerrigan that it is unethical for an alderman to advocate or vote for a matter where their family member has such an interest. Why did this council violate its responsibility to the taxpayers by ignoring the legal ethical conflicts of its law firm and an alderman? The Illinois Constitution grants every person the right to a healthful environment as a matter of public policy. The city's zoning code states that its purposes include promoting public health and safety, securing pure air and safety, and encouraging the preservation and enhancement of natural resources and natural features. The code specifically requires that existing trees shall be maintained in place wherever possible. This council is therefore legally obligated to defend the taxpayers' rights to traffic safety and tree preservation. According to Tri-County Landfill Company versus Pollution Control Board, this council's vote does not legally act as an estoppel because that would deprive the public of constitutional rights, specifically including the right to a healthful environment. When this council voted to endanger young children and other pedestrians and to kill oxygen-producing trees for no reason, this council violated public rights. Therefore, this council is legally obligated to undo this iniquity regardless of any promises it may have made to the developer. This council must do the right thing, undo the wrong thing, and always remember its duty to the taxpayers.
Thank you. City Manager, I have a question for you. Does the law firm Holland and Knight represent us in any way at all?
No, they do not.
Thank
Did
you.
they ever? And did they at the time, which would have been March 10th? And did they ever represent the city in any similar matter?
They did once upon a time. They do not now, nor do I believe they did on March 10th, but Mr. Ferraris
Check the bills list.
has agreed they did not.
That they do not now or that they did not on March 10th?
Talk to Mr. Farrar.
I tried.
It's
I
public
telephoned him.
Your mother is next.
I telephoned him in March. He has yet to return that call.
B.K. Rao, 2246 Sherman Avenue. This is again about Kendall property re-subdivision. It involves the killing of 24 trees for no reason. It involves a dangerous alley that empties into the narrowest of the trees, thereby endangering the lives of people, especially little children. As I mentioned repeatedly, there was no justification for allowing such a plan. There was no discussion among aldermen in public. The Evanston Patch reported that an alderman was overheard assuring the developer's lawyer that the vote would be pushed through, no matter what concerns citizens have. Is this how the council fulfills its responsibility to the taxpayers? When 24 trees are sentenced to death in a one-block area without any ecological study, traffic safety study, or legal citation, what conclusion can the taxpayers come to? The aldermen should ask themselves whether Tree City USA is a befitting title when they voted to kill 24 trees without any justification. The aldermen should also ask themselves what impact their vote has on maintaining ecological balance. The aldermen should think twice and reverse the re-subdivision. Otherwise, the only award this city deserves is the one given by a taxpayer, the Golden Ponji Award. Hope you will enjoy it for a long time.
Thank you. Next is DeKel Fonda, John Bushnell, Dr. Mary Trujillo, and Javoid Simmons.
Good evening, DeKel Fonda. I'm a 31-year resident of Evanston, 2nd Ward mostly. And I have come tonight to speak about the police outpost that is, as we speak, being constructed within the premises of the Dominick's at Evanston Plaza. I will read most of my comments, but I basically want to let you know that the biggest concern that I bring tonight is the process by which this decision was made. And it's having been involved in community activism as long as I have here and been in front of you so many times, it's completely unheard of to me that a decision that's going to affect neighbors and businesses such as this, which we'll detail, would be made without community input and without council input, because my understanding is that many of you also don't know a lot about what is happening over there right now. So let me read on. I want to give some historical perspective. 12 years ago, Dominick's originally applied for their liquor license. When they did, the community stood in opposition to this, fearing that our proximity to the high school would lead to youth theft and their increased use of alcohol. However, it was approved, and a compromise was brokered between the city, the community, and Dominick's. The license was granted, and Dominick's had to enclose this department and use a cashier at its exit. There was no theft by youth or anyone else at that point. But within months, that decision was appealed by the store and subsequently overturned by the city's liquor commission. The enclosure came down and youth theft went up. A problem that was once prevented is now being addressed by establishing a police presence within Dominick's to essentially supplement, in my opinion, Dominick's private security force and to fix a problem that could have been avoided from the beginning. There is a long list of alternative ways to address this concern of theft within Dominick's, from eliminating liquor from the only liquor store that is close to our high school, to returning the enclosure that was originally in the agreement with the community, to hiring an off-duty Evanston police officer during peak problem hours, to lighting up the area where the liquor is shelved, move it away from the door. There are a multitude of options, and they have been shared with the chief and with a PR corporate staff. Placing a police outpost within any store is unprecedented in Evanston. Dominick's PR staff has also shared with us that there is no other Dominick's in the entire country that have police deployed inside their business. I'm not sure that we deserve that national distinction, but I am sure that such an unprecedented move in Evanston needs to involve city government and the community. I also believe that this is a concern for every Evanston taxpayer because time is money, and their time and where they spend it, police, is our tax money at work. We need our limited police services on the streets, on foot, on their bikes, like they used to be, riding in a non-crisis mode through our neighborhood, interacting in positive ways with our youth. We don't see that anymore.
DeKalb, I need you to wind up.
Okay. Can you give me a minute? Cede me a minute. They'll not be doing this if they're sitting in an enclosed room with a peephole inside Dominic's at the opposite end of the store from the liquor department, which is exactly where it's being built. I ask you, as our representatives, is it really the message that you want to convey about Evanston in general and our neighborhood in particular, that this is a city where we need to deploy police services within our local grocery stores? And who will be next? Jewel, Whole Foods, they all have theft. Aldi is applying right now for a liquor license, and they want the police to help them design it. Perhaps Aldi's will offer to build an outpost. If together the city, the police, the community agree that an enhanced police presence is warranted in the area, and I'm not sure about that, then perhaps we should consider creating a separate satellite office for the Evanston Police Department within one of the many empty storefronts at the plaza. Some of us tonight are here to ask Council to take action to address this issue by putting a temporary hold on the deployment of police within Dominic's while referring this matter to the Administration and Public Works Committee, where it can follow due process, a step I think we've missed here. This will then offer an opportunity for the diverse views in our community to be heard. And since we notified our area about this issue, there has been a very active conversation going on through the email network. This is a discussion that needs to happen publicly, not online. In the meantime, the structure...
I really need you to
Okay,
wrap up.
that's it.
Thank you.
That's our ask. Thank you.
John Bushnell, an Evanston resident for 33 years, and even longer in the second ward than you. I think we should start the process over. You know there's a lot of agitation in the neighborhood. Should go to committee and should address 4 questions. One of them is this, and I should say that I've learned some things from the chief and from the discussion with the older people. Is this really necessary? And by really necessary, is there a problem that can only be solved by the police? If the liquor is the problem, if that's what's attracting the crime, well, there are obviously other ways to deal with the problem, which I think are all preferable to employing a policeman, no matter how episodically, as a kind of a security force in Dominic's. What kind of an impact is this going to have on the neighborhood? That question can only be answered in connection with another. How exactly are the police people going to be deployed? I heard the chief explain that. I didn't completely understand. So it seems to me that there are 2 possibilities, and I'm not clear which is the real one. One is to be a visible presence and therefore to be a deterrent to crime within the store. The other is to do paperwork off in a different room, not be a visible presence, and not particularly, I would suspect, be a deterrent. If we are posting a policeman to be a visible deterrent, then that raises the question, well, what kind of impact is this going to have? We already know from other business owners and from many residents that they really dislike the idea of a visibly deterring policeman, precisely because it suggests that this is an area, a store, a neighborhood that has a crime problem. I don't think of Dominic's as a hotbed of crime. If you've held a hearing, there must be some going on, but I've been going to that store 2 or 3 times a week ever since it opened, and I confess I've never seen a crime there. Perhaps I don't hang out with high school students, and therefore I'm missing all of the action.
Mr. Bushnell, I need you to wrap up because you ceded a minute.
Yes, the last point, not to repeat too much of what DeKalb said, the last question is this the best way to employ one of Evanston's finest? And I agree completely that walking or biking around the neighborhood, moving around, would be a much more useful way to employ a policeman.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Mary Trujillo, Javoyd Simmons, Reverend Blair Hall, and Nancy Flory.
Good evening. I'm Mary Trujillo. I live at 1222 Darrow. And there are many points of view about the presence of the outpost in Dominic, some supportive, some not. This being Evanston, when we don't have full answers, we make up stuff. So instead of a lively public discussion about what the outpost is, what the objectives are, we have this firestorm of information on the internet and through email. So there's an absence of answers. There are several questions that I've heard spoken, and I just want to share those with you tonight. Some of them in general have to do with what is the specific functioning of this outpost? What will it be? What will it look like? Secondly, is the city of Evanston in effect or in actuality supplementing Dominic's corporate security policy? And if so, does this create a bad precedent? Are there other organizations or businesses that will ask to do the same? Can we afford to do that? What are the larger and long-term implications of such an arrangement? Are these mostly positive? Are there disadvantages to the process? Next question, what is and what should be the role of public input in making these kinds of decisions? Again, for good or for bad, we have created an environment in Evanston where we say we value a process of democracy, of public involvement. If this is the case in this situation, there are a few steps that have been missed. Is that what we want to do? Is that the intention? And finally, what should citizens expect both in terms of our interactions with the council, but also what should we expect in terms of our interactions with the police department? What are the implications, again, for developing a police presence in Dominic's? I do want to thank you all for your time and for furthering this process of allowing citizens to give input. And I would encourage us as a city to take that very seriously and continue to value the fact that people do care about the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Javoyd Simmons, and I'm a resident for, I guess 31, 32 years, something like that. I have a lot of concerns about the outpost going into the Dominic's area. Much of what I would say has been said. I think that the chief is well-intentioned in what he intends to do, the whole idea of kind of cutting down on youth crime and deterring and things like that. The reality is I don't think that it's going to be a help. I think overall, in the long run, it'll be a hindrance. My concern is people that come to our community already have a perception that it's one to be feared. And increasing the police presence in a kind of an institution like Dominic's, that you have to have a policeman there so that you can safely shop, conveys the wrong message. So I do recognize, too, that there is a sense of fear that exists in our community. And one of the troubling things is I listen to the emails that go back and forth. Some of the fear seems to be directed at men who look like me, men of color, Hispanic, African Americans, that they're perceived to be a problem. And I think that some of these things and some of our discussions, in the vein that they're happening, exacerbate that perception. I think that most of the young men in this community, African American, Hispanic, white or otherwise, are not criminally inclined, but the measures that we take that seem to be drastic convey something that's very different from that. I've been the target of unfair scrutiny historically, and many of the young men in this community have as well. I think that as we reach out and talk about engaging the community and engaging the young folks that are here and maybe getting them in a different path needs to start with how we bring them into the system in the first place. They're brought into our system at an unfair rate relative to everyone else. When you start to address these kinds of situations, I think we'll have a more positive outcome. But overall, I think that the outpost is not one that will be beneficial. I think it hurts the perceptions of the community. And I think a lot of the concerns for the community, for many people who may have some fears, center on people of color. Somewhere I'd like to see that change. I would be hopeful that it could change in Evanston. Evanston was mentioned in statistics right along with Chicago and some other places around the country as having a concern or this high rate of involvement with police authorities. I would like to see our police do something different and be more engaging, be more on the street, be out and involved and active in positive situations as opposed to what many have called targeting. And often with no reason at all other than they're suspicious. And for me, I have to look at it, I hate to say this, the suspicion is based on the color of their skin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was 3 minutes perfectly. Reverend Blair Hull, Nancy Flory, and Mary Rosinski are next.
Thank you. My name is Reverend Blair Hull. I live at 1215 Dodge. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think much of what I had written down has already been said. But what I want to say is two things, just two words, is process. We would like to have a better process, and perception. I moved to Evanston in 1982. I am a minister. I serve a church in Deerfield, and I moved to Deerfield in 95. But when they sold the parsonage, we moved back to Evanston. And I live right across the street from the shopping center in the yellow townhouses on Dodge. And some of what's been said today is true, and some of it I don't see. Yes, the kids are walking back and forth to school. Yes, that's a tough time for, a lot of congestion. But I don't see a lot of people out there shaking hands with the kids and saying, hi, how you doing? I think the kids are getting vilified here because in the newspaper comments and everything it said this is happening at two different times, 3:45 and 10:30 or something like that. Well, the talk in the neighborhood is the real violent stuff where the security guards have been threatened happened at night, and it's by adult men. Now, that's a different story, and I think they should be, the police should be called immediately when something like that's happening. I've thought this before. It's hard for me living across the street from an empty shopping center. And there's so many buildings there that I would think the city could do some kind of arrangement with Dominick's to, instead of spending money on police at the Dominick's, why not have a drop-in center where the kids can come and be mentored and talk to people? And I just think if the kids are the issue, there's so many ways it would be really positive for them. But I really know, and I also just want to say one more thing. One of the gentlemen who live in my neighborhood who moved there 5 years ago, who is Latino, said to me now he is afraid because of what has happened in our neighborhood in the last few weeks, and in this year, the issue at Dominick's and the man dying down a couple houses down from me, that they're afraid to let their children outside. This is a much bigger deal, I think, than security at Dominick's. And I also reiterate that why isn't Dominick's taking care of their own security? So I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the neighborhood. And like I said, I moved back here. I drive back and forth to Deerfield now because I had a really wonderful experience. My kids graduated from ETHS. I think they know some of your kids. So I had very high hopes, and I've been a little surprised. And I don't see police there after school, and I'm noticing it because in the afternoons I'm often working at home. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing all about how we manage this.
My name is Nancy Floy, and I own the Hartwood Center for Body, Mind, Spirit, located at 1818 Dempster and Dodge. I live at 1811 Greenwood, so you could say that I am 24/7 on the Dodge corridor. I live and work there. I've never been to a city council meeting, and I have to say, I hope that this is my last one, no offense intended. You have a hard job, and I appreciate very much the work that you're doing. I also appreciate the chief. Oh, did he leave? Okay. Oh, there he is, yeah. And I also appreciate DeKel Fonda, who watches over our neighborhood for us. So the Hartwood Center is a holistic healthcare center. I purchased the building last May. It's 12,200 square feet, and we have 45 small businesses, mostly minority owned in the building. I searched for 8 years for a building to purchase to move my center to. I was formerly located at Maple and Davis. And I searched for 8 years, and this is the neighborhood that I chose. I sold a house that was in East Evanston to come into this neighborhood to work and live. And I love the community. I've fallen in love with this community. So for me tonight, it hurts my heart. I know a lot of people say to me, oh, Nancy, you know, you're just one of those Buddhists that lives in La La Land. And I say, well, I fit right in here in Evanston then. But it's not true. I researched where to put my business. I researched the neighborhood. I talked to the police. And the statistics didn't support the perception in the neighborhood. So I chose to do what you're not supposed to do and cash out my retirement account and I have put everything into my building. We have 500 people a week that come to the Hartwood Center. They're coming in from Chicago, West, and the northern suburbs. We've taken an informal poll in our community, and our community does not support the outpost in the grocery store. I spend a lot of time telling my community that we've moved to a safe neighborhood. My community is now saying to me, if the neighborhood is so safe, why do you have to have a police outpost in your grocery store? And finally, I just want to say, with all due respect, the chief and I have had some good conversations. We've talked about short-term and long-term solutions. We've talked about meditation, big minds and small minds. We've agreed, DeKel and I also, we've talked about meditation. We've talked about peace. And that's finally what I would say, is I hope that we can come to a peaceful solution, that we can all come to the table and work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Rosinski. I actually live at 1729 Chancellor. I shop at that Dominic's a lot, although there's a Dominic's right next to mine where I live. And as I've talked to DeKel, and I have to respect the community because you guys are there more than I am, the question of whether or not it's appropriate and the process that this came about is a concern that I also have. And I questioned whether or not how I would feel if this were going on at Dominic's on Green Bay, up on near Isabella, and what would people think? And I have to think that it would be, again, a question of the perception of the public would be like, yeah, you don't go to Evanston if they have to keep police in their grocery stores. And with all due respect to Chief Eddington and the Evanston Police Department, and I have nothing but respect for their efforts that I've seen lately to get out and know the kids. And that's where our problems seem to stem when we say it's happening after school. And if we're having problems in the evenings, maybe there shouldn't be liquor being sold in the evenings at the Dominic's. But I would suggest that we could look at other alternatives rather than taking this to begin with. And then someone brought up, I think, a very pertinent question, and that is, what are we doing with our kids? If we have money for a police outpost, and I know Dominic's is sponsoring it, and we have an empty mall there, and maybe we have kids that need a place to go, and I'm not just talking library, I'm thinking maybe reading, getting Dominic's to help have a reading place in there and have these kids doing something positive and having a positive interaction. We just had a huge safety summit a couple months ago and talked about what do we need to do with these kids? How do we bring them into the community? How do we make them responsible citizens? I think if we could maybe focus a little bit more on that and bring something over to that mall that focus is on bringing kids in on a learning level and keeping that thought process going. So I would just say more discussion with the community would probably be well received by people in North Evanston, South Evanston, because if you do it there, at what point are you going to do it over there, and at what point are you going to do it there? I think it's a dangerous precedent. Thanks.
Thank you. Bennett Johnson. And Priscilla, I'm assuming you don't plan to speak twice on Fleetwood. Okay. All right, then you're after Mr. Johnson.
Members of the City Council, fellow citizens, my name is Bennett Johnson, and I'm not sure if I should say how long I've been here. But I am reminded of Abe Lincoln's opening 4 and how many years ago. In 1955, I worked for the Los Angeles Probation Department, and I got involved in a study of police brutality and police practices in Los Angeles. And because of that, I became somewhat of an expert on police procedure, arrest, search, and seizure, and so forth, and worked with Harold Washington closely in his development of crime legislation. So I have some insight into police practices and what's appropriate and what isn't. Number one, the best, and this is not only from a general theoretical point of view, but from my experience as a child in Evanston. We had police living in my block, Sam Jones and Bill Jones, and they helped keep crime down for 2 reasons. They knew every kid on the street. So deployment is key, not having a castle or a fortress to look out from, or a car where you drive by and look, but people on the street. You get to know who the kids are, you know which are the ones who create problems, and you know which ones are not. It's more cost effective, and it's also more efficient in the final analysis. I think also that when we talk about an outpost in a private corporation, that to me is ludicrous. It should be to the contrary. The Dominics should be paying us, the citizens, to have some kind of outpost in the reading room, the library, one of those empty spaces there. This, why, if we do it for Dominics, why can't we do it for First Bank? Why can't we do it for any other private company in town? It's ludicrous. It's totally against the principle of public-private partnership. So the cost is one important thing. The other important thing is that process. I've lived in Evanston, as I said, for a long time. And the one thing that's always been trademark of this city is that the citizens have input. The people speak. And when we have a situation that's done almost surreptitiously under the cover of night, that is totally against the principles of this city. And I think it violates not only the rights of the citizens, but the rights of you as council members. You have a responsibility. You have the power. And to have this thing occur that's totally contrary to all ethics and all ethics as far as, well, the other important thing, again, skipping around a little bit, this is the home of Francis Willard.
Bennett, I do need you to wrap up.
I'll wrap up like this. I know that there is a problem because when I was a kid, I stole liquor from the store. I turned out okay, but some kids didn't. But the point is that you cannot do it by having a police outpost. You have to do it in other ways, like was mentioned earlier, was done in the first instance. And I think in that way we can have a better situation in this town, and people will be happier, and the citizens, and Francis Willard won't turn over in her grave.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
My name is Priscilla Giles, and I have nothing against Twiggs Park. In fact, I went to school with his granddaughter, and I live now in the house that his daughter lived in. My concern was that something would be done to erase Twiggs Park, and I see the large wooden fixture that is there and that is at the other parks, and I'd like to see that stay. My question is the amount of money that's being used to put corners in that could be better used to help some people to stay in their homes, and that's my That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizen comment. Alderman Rainey, could we have the consent agenda? Oh, Alderman Braithwaite, sorry. Sorry, Alderman.
Would now be appropriate time. Can I just respond?
Go right ahead.
I'd first just like to thank Chief Eddington and Commander Hartley for conducting three, I think they have those yet, just with the folks who are here, 3 community meetings. And my one regret just during that whole process is that I can see you not doing a good job in publicizing those, although they were in the articles and we're passing them out just so the council can see, and for the members who are here, see that this conversation has been in the media for the past 2 months. And I know that Bennett, who writes for the NAACP's paper, and a few of the members here have been part of those conversations conducted by the Chief of Police and Commander Hartley. So I do appreciate that. And we will have another conversation this Thursday at Perla Cafe at 7 p.m. to continue the discussion. I also want to thank quickly the folks that came out to share your thoughts. I appreciate hearing from you. I know for a few of you, this is an ongoing conversation, but for those of you that I haven't met, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to continue this conversation. I think part of this issue that I really want to get out there is it's more than just Dominic's. And I don't know how many times we have to say that, and I think the Chief has done an excellent job of doing that. And I would just like to remind the council of just a couple of events that have happened within the year, and this was before I was seated. Mayor, you might remember the student that was killed over on the 1400 block of Darrow. My family certainly knows, and the folks that are on the 1400 block of Darrow, the violent murder that took place outside of Smitty's garage. I don't think I need to remind anyone that this past year we had a shooting at a public location in McDonald's. Within the past week, on the 1200 block of Dodge, we also had another young adult murdered. I'm often woken up by the middle of the night by gunshots in our community as well as phone calls from residents, and I would challenge any residents that's here who lives in that neighborhood to say that within the past 2 months that they have not heard gunshots. I bring those up not to be alarming, but to really explain as I've talked to the Chief of Police and with the Dominic staff that it's really more about stabilizing that community. And to Mary Trujillo's question, the bigger picture is simply this. I'm focused on economic development in that area. And it's really difficult from my perspective, and I've had this conversation with our economic development team, to have an economic development and develop an area where you still have crime. And although I understand and I respect the perception because I live in that same community as well, there is an underlying issue of crime that actually makes me afraid as well. And so when you look at this police outpost, I would challenge you to look beyond that because it's not the only solution. And I hope that, again, on this Thursday at 7, we can continue to talk about those solutions because they do include a more positive police presence. They do include the expansion of that reading program and literacy. They do include increasing the lighting in that area, as well as I mentioned before, just the overall economic development that we hope to attract more businesses to the Dempster Dodge Mall. We hope to create more jobs and more foot traffic. So just in closing, I thank you all again. This is not the end of the conversation, but the beginning. And I hope that the focus in moving forward is really taking a look at those broader issues that impact the neighborhood. And again, it isn't just restricted to policing one store. The issues are a lot greater than that. And what you should have received passing around is a statement from Dominic's that will share that this is not unique to Evanston, that they have put an outpost in the Howard Clark Mall. And we've also passed along a couple of articles that just will show that this conversation has been out there for a while. And I do regret to the residents that if this is your first time hearing about it, I encourage you to show up Thursday, 7 p.m. at Perla so we can continue the conversation. And I do apologize. I received a number of emails from residents who wanted me to read their comments. I received a few negative, but mostly positive were the ones that actually took the time to reach out to me. So I'm not going to read those this evening, but I do hope that you come out on Thursday evening and maybe I'll share some of those in our larger community meeting. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me get back to on the consent agenda, the first item we have is the the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 11. We have the City of Evanston payroll through July 17 in the amount of $2,836,107.68, and the City of Evanston bills through July 26 in the amount of $2,483,592.30. The Administration and Public Works Committee asked your approval to authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the James Park Irrigation System Improvement Project to Halloran and Yauch for the base bid plus alternate one in the total amount of $79,340. Funding is from the 2011 Capital Improvements Program. The committee also asks your approval to authorize the manager to execute a contract for the Twiggs Park renovation project for the base bid to Claus Brothers in the total amount of $74,012. Funding is from the Community Development Block Grant, $40,000, and a reallocation of CDBG funds of $34,892. The committee also asks your approval to authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the cabinet replacement at the Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center project with O'Hare Construction Company of Evanston, Illinois, in the amount of $26,360. Funding is from the FY 2011 CDBG block grant account totaling has $30,000 in it. We also ask your approval to authorize the manager to execute a sole source contract with Metro Tank and Pump Company in the amount of $23,948 to repair 2 underground storage tanks at the service center. This is urgent, and the reason for the sole source bid is, were we not to do a sole source, it would take 2 months to bid this project out, and they are already on site. Next, we ask your approval to authorize the manager to execute a contract with North Shore Towing to provide towing and other related services for the city for an initial 3-year period commencing on August 1, 2011 and terminating July 31st, 2014, with 2 optional 1-year renewals. Next, we ask your approval to authorize the manager also to execute a contract in response to bid 1238 for the demolition and removal of the residential buildings, accessory structures, and trees located at 1708 and 1710 Darrow to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Impactor, in the amount of $27,400. Funding for this work will be from the West Evanston Tax Increment Financing District. We also ask your approval to authorize the manager to execute change order number 2 in the amount of $8,927 for the agreement with Keno and Sons Construction for the 1964 Filter Addition Rehab Project. This will increase the total contract from $3,453,912 to $3,462,839. The need for additional steel and masonry work was not visible until the demolition uncovered areas that are normally hidden from view. We ask your approval also to amend the 2011 Capital Improvements Program, increasing the FY 2011 program funding requests by a total of $1,022,513 from $31,415,446 to $32,437,959. We ask council approval to also authorize the city manager to publicly offer for sale through public auction, Obanoff Auction Services to be exact, various vehicles and equipment owned by the city that were assigned to various divisions and departments that are currently out of service. This is for introduction. Also for introduction is a request for approval of Ordinance 62011, which amends Title IV, Chapter 22 of the City Code regarding demolition taxes. This ordinance will provide a waiver process for properties that involve demolition without the possibility of redevelopment on the site as originally contemplated in the definition of the tax, and properties, and also properties that recycle those materials that are demolished from the structure on the given site. That's for introduction. Under planning and development, the committee requests your approval of $250,000 in home funds to be layered with committed NSP2 funds for the rehab of a 3-unit mixed-income NSP2 property located at 1509 Emerson. We've identified and committed home funds for 3 NSP2 properties totaling $540,000 of the remaining $600,000 that was approved. 1509 Emerson needs approximately $250,000 in home funds, which will exceed the already approved $600,000 in the home account. We also ask your approval to introduce the process to develop 2011-2013 work plan for the Housing Commission, and recommends, wait, let me just start over here. As part of a review process to develop its 2011-13 work plan, this is from the Housing Commission. The Housing Commission recommends that proposed ordinance 61011 be adopted to align with current responsibilities. The Housing Commission has reviewed and approved the proposed changes. This is for introduction. It's really radically different from their previous charge, so I encourage everybody to read it. Under Human Services, and there is no report, and under other committees, Ordinance 54011 amends portions of Title VII, Chapter 3 of the City Code relating to the Playground and Recreation Board. This is for introduction and will be discussed more fully at the next meeting. Under appointments, there are none, Madam Mayor, and with that, I move approval of the consent agenda.
And I second the motion.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Approval of the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Seeing no lights on for discussion, City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Grover.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burrs.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Wynn.
7-0, the consent agenda passes. Next is call of the wards, beginning with Alderman Holmes.
No report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Grover?
No report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have a report. I found it very timely that we're discussing this outpost at Dominic's, and I'd like to make a comment on it. I believe, to say that this outpost would be supplementing their security, I think is it's just going in the wrong direction, because it's my impression that their security is pretty meaningless. Most of the time I see their security people out on the walkway in front of the store on their cell phones. I've seen them kick cans and trash. They don't seem to be really engaged. And while one member of the audience tonight talked about it being illegal to have off-duty cops in stores, I know for a fact that we ordered, when we allowed Starbucks to go in on Main Street, we ordered them to hire an off-duty cop for traffic control and other matters. So I know that. I know in Target, frequently, I see an off-duty cop. At the theater, there is always an off-duty cop, always. I mean, I just don't know where that idea came from, that it shouldn't be done. I think if Dominic's has a problem, they ought to be ordered to hire or encouraged to hire an off-duty cop. Whether there's an outpost there or not is another thing. I kind of took offense at some of the comments tonight that an outpost means that you're crime-ridden. One of the great things about Howard Street these days is it is absolutely not crime-ridden. And we do have an outpost there. We bought a building and put a big sign up and renovated the whole thing and made it look beautiful and said this is a police outpost. And the cops are there frequently doing a variety of things. I think it's interesting that the police department, this is leading into something else. The police department is talking about putting in an outpost without community participation, according to the citizens, at Dominic's. I cannot get the police chief in our town to set up a meeting with one of the worst landlords in town because he feels it would be intimidating to that landlord. I said, if you don't do it, every other police chief we have had in my tenure here, one of the most effective ways, and we're talking about licensing units tonight, one of the most effective ways to interact with a bad landlord is to have a meeting in the chief of police's office. They have a come to Jesus moment, and there's just no two ways about it. And for this chief to absolutely refuse to set a meeting because he feels it's intimidating. The building I'm talking about is at 135 Custer. At 135 Custer, the taxpayers in this community are spending thousands of dollars to have a police car sit in front of a 3-flat where there is one vacant unit 24 hours a day. The cop sits there 24 hours a day, 3 different shifts, sitting in front of this building because the neighbors in that building terrorize the community. And guess what, boys and girls? In that building lives a city employee. A city employee who not only has information that could help us deal with the issues in that building, but I am not allowed to talk to the city employee. The city employee is considered different than all the other neighbors in that community who are struggling to make that neighborhood better. And yet we are not allowed to talk to the city employee. Not to mention the fact that there are outstanding tickets and outstanding bills and outstanding everything. All I want is this person to come forward and talk to us and let us know what can we do to make things better at that building. Cannot find the landlord. Chief of police will not get his hands on him, will not bring him into the office to talk. I've just about had it. Over the years, I have managed to improve and civilize 24-unit buildings, 48-unit buildings, 10-unit buildings, and 9-unit buildings. I cannot make any headway, and neither can the community that is highly organized, by the way, at 135 Custer. I get emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. You've got to do something. You've got to do something. They're out there screaming. They're out there doing this. They're out there doing that. I was told a month ago, when we got the guy with the gun on the front yard of that building, we felt that we solved the problem. Well, we didn't solve the problem. The guy with the gun was just another problem. So I want a meeting with the city employee, who's one of the neighbors, and I want a meeting with the landlord. And city manager, maybe you can make that happen. I've been asking for at least 2 months.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, if I may respond to Alderman Rainey, the meeting with the landlord is being set up and the employee is working with the police department.
And that is somehow a secret from the alderman?
It is not.
All right, so you're telling me this in public at this grand moment. I appreciate that. I mean, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want the meeting with the landlord, and I will meet with the employee, regardless of permission from anybody. All right, next. Good news.
If you want me to come and look intimidating, I will fail, but I will come.
I don't want to intimidate anybody. I want to sit down and have a meeting of the minds. There is no reason why one 3-flat should be causing us thousands of dollars a day. That's what it's costing us. Thousands of dollars. Last time the guy was in court, we got over a $4,000 judgment. So there's that outstanding, plus a cop sitting in front of that building 24 hours a day. Does that make any sense? ladies and gentlemen.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, while we have had police presence there, and certainly Alderman Rainey, I have been with Alderman Rainey myself in front of that building with a group of neighbors a few months ago. We do not have an officer there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have had an officer there on a periodic basis. The police department has been working very closely with the alderman and the neighbors on this issue. It is unfortunate that the issue continues, but we continue to be aggressive on this, and we will set up.
City manager, there's been a police officer there 24 hours a day for at least the last week and a half.
That's not my understanding, but.
Well, that's what the neighbors are telling me, and every time I've been by, there's been 1 or 2 cop cars in front of there, and I go by there all the time. We've had one there more than any other building in the entire city of Evanston. Okay, all right. On the 28th, in this very neighborhood, 3 buildings away, is going to be one of the most joyous occasions held in the 8th Ward and ever, I think. A food truck fest. We've had to start turning away food trucks because of the popularity of this event. We're going to have 5 food trucks and a concert by a group called Expo 76, who I've never heard of before, but I understand they're very, very much fun. And the food truck fest will start at 5:30, and the concert will start at 7:30. So we encourage you to come. We're considering this Ravinia South. You don't have to bring your lunch. You can just buy it there. Bring your tablecloths and your candles, and join in the fun. We're really, really looking forward to it. We asked a lot of questions tonight about the licensing program. I endorse it and support it 100%, but I think it needs a little tweaking, and look forward to hearing about that. Also, I think the time probably has come for us to take a review of the landlord-tenant ordinance. A lot of changes are going to have to be made when the licensing program is integrated into that ordinance. So I really encourage that we get a committee together or whatever to work on that. I'm very concerned about some of the comments about Dominic's tonight. That shopping center, it's only, I mean, there are anchors such as the Dance Center and Panino's, they're great. But that Dominic's is the anchor there. And that they have liquor is a very important commodity for them to have. And this idea of getting rid of Dominic's or getting rid of liquor at Dominic's or stopping the sale of Dominic's at a certain time, I'm in there at least 3 days a week. I've never seen the kind of problems we're hearing about. If there's theft of Dominic's liquor, get an off-duty cop, but don't put the screws to Dominic's and take away their liquor license. I think they're doing a great job. They've moved their department way to the rear of the store, and it's a beautiful store ever since they renovated it.
Thank you. Alderman Burris?
I actually just wanted to follow up on the landlord ordinance, as well as some things that Alderman Rainey was talking about with these multifamily buildings. You can have one in a neighborhood that really takes down the entire neighborhood, and it is a real problem. We had a meeting last week about one particular building in the Florence Monroe area, and it would be really helpful if we had a list of tools in our toolbox to go after these folks, particularly the landlords. The one building I'm talking about, it's in short sale. The inside of the building, they have birds living in the vent above the stove. They've got mattresses all over the basement. People coming and going, loud parties, trash in the front. We send code enforcement out, and they do what they can. But it would be very helpful, I think, when we have these problems to say, okay, we're now going to hit them with code enforcement. We're going to have the police department out there. What else are we doing? And giving the neighbors the tools to say, who do you call? You're calling the front desk of the police department, 911 if there's something immediate happening. But we need to be very proactive. I know that I constantly calling the code enforcement and the police about these particular properties. We probably have 4 or 5 in the ward. So we need to find a better solution to go after these landlords and find ways to get them to get their tenants either to abide by the social norms of the community or they need to go.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite?
Just really quick, I just want to thank the neighbors of this Church Street Village. This past Sunday, I was able to hang out with them at their neighborhood block party and had a wonderful time. This Thursday, I'll be meeting with the Dewey Darrow neighbors at Perla, as I'd mentioned before. And then just a couple of quick comments. And I would agree with a couple of things that you had to say, particularly about Dominic's. I think they do play a very vital role in the community, as well as we look to attract more businesses to that shopping mall. So I appreciate your comments. In addition to that, this Friday, just on the subject of the bad landlords, we're meeting with one similar to what we've done when I lived in the 8th Ward many, many years ago. And myself, Alderman Rainey, Alderman Holmes, were meeting with one particular landlord that has several properties in our combined wards who has a long history of violations with property standards and a nice little police report to go along with it. So I don't know what we have to do to correct this issue, but just given the economy and given the fact that our rental population is starting to grow, it is a concern of mine. So that's something that I'm definitely willing to explore with city manager and with other aldermen. What do we do about this situation? I mean, just this past weekend, I sat with Alderman Holmes and watching a resident cry because she was having issues with her landlord and just feeling completely helpless, and it just almost ripped my heart out. So I will take a stand with you all on that issue, and I think it starts this Friday when we meet with that particular person. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Nguyen? No report, Madam Mayor. Thank you. That concludes call of the wards. Alderman Nguyen, do you have a motion?
Let me find it. I think that you did the same thing I did. You took off the same thing I did.
Okay.
It's just, that's Grant's opinion. Oh, here it is. Okay. Madam Mayor, I move
Pursuant
to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, 120/2A, that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding real estate litigation and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILS 120/2A, C5, C6, C11, and C21, and are set forth as follows. Do I read all the exceptions?
No, you're doing fine.
All right.
Been moved and seconded. City Clerk, seeing no lights for discussion, could you have a roll call vote?
Alderman Holmes. Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, the motion passes. Thank you, Alderman Nguyen.
You're welcome.
I suddenly panicked.